Rain pelted against the hospital windows like a clock, counting down the moments Elena had tried so hard to delay. The waiting room smelled faintly of antiseptic and fear, a smell she had come to know well in recent months. Her hands trembled as she filled out the last bit of paperwork. It was supposed to be a standard follow-up, a routine diagnostic, but for Elena Hayes, nothing about this felt routine. She had been carrying a secret for weeks, a pain in her side, subtle at first, then stabbing like a silent betrayal. Her boyfriend had left her only months ago, calling her too emotional, and her father, once her shield, had passed away from cancer the previous year. Elena had stopped depending on people, doctors, lovers, even friends. She had built walls so tall even she forgot how to climb out. When they called her name, she stood up on legs that felt too fragile for the weight of her fears. The nurse led her down a sterile hallway past doors that closed softly behind lives being dissected by tests and machines. When she reached exam room 7, she expected cold professionalism, more scans, more waiting. But the moment the door opened and she saw him, Dr. Lucas Avery, something shifted. He wasn't like the others. No clipboard barrier, no distracted glances, just soft eyes, stormy blue, and an expression of immediate concern. He looked about 32, dressed in a clean white coat with a stethoscope resting lightly around his neck. His tie was slightly loosened, like he had just stepped away from an intense procedure, but his attention was entirely hers. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice smooth, grounding, "I'll be with you every step of this. No rushing, no pressure, just you and me figuring this out." Her chest tightened. She hated how much those words meant to her. She nodded, "Okay." The exam began like any other: blood pressure, heartbeat, questions about diet and pain frequency. But as he gently placed the cold stethoscope against her skin and asked her to breathe, Elena felt the world lurch. Her vision darkened, her lungs refused to listen. Panic clawed up her throat, and just as she tried to warn him, the room spun like a carousel, then nothing. She fainted. When she came to, she was no longer lying flat. She was cradled in his arms, literally. Dr. Avery was holding her, one hand supporting her back, the other pressed against her pulse. "Elena," he whispered urgently, "you're okay, you're safe, I've got you." Her eyes fluttered open, catching the genuine panic on his face. He wasn't just performing, he cared. That realization cracked something inside her that had been frozen far too long. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You're not alone anymore." After stabilizing her vitals and laying her gently back down, he sat beside her, his hand never fully leaving hers. Over the next few weeks, Elena returned for further evaluations. The fainting spell had been triggered by a combination of anxiety, low blood pressure, and emotional stress, all rooted deeper than just physical illness. Dr. Avery became more than her physician. He became her anchor. He listened, truly listened, to her fears, her silence, her stories of loss. He told her things too, about his sister who had died young, how that drove him into medicine, how sometimes he felt like he was trying to save every woman in her place. Their sessions extended past test results and prescriptions. They talked about music, books, regret, hope. And slowly, something beautiful began to bloom. She laughed again, the real kind, not the polite chuckle she gave her co-workers. He started keeping a flower on the exam table, changing it every week. Sunflowers for courage, daisies for innocence, and once, a single white rose which neither of them addressed, but both understood. One rainy afternoon, Elena came in for what was supposed to be a final checkup. The scans were clear. The cyst had shrunk. She was fine physically, but as she sat on the exam table, the silence between them ached. "I guess this is goodbye," she said softly, forcing a smile. Lucas didn't smile back. He stepped forward slowly, as if afraid he might lose her in a blink. "I don't want to be just the guy who helped you get better," he said, voice tight with something vulnerable. "I want to be the one who sees you when you're strong, when you laugh without fear, when you wake up and the pain is gone, not just in your body, but in your heart." Elena's breath caught. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not as a patient, not as a problem, but as a woman. Then don't say goodbye, she whispered. And he didn't. Their relationship began carefully. They both feared the clichés, the doctor and the patient, but what they shared wasn't born of fantasy. It was real. It was the long nights they spent talking about loss, the way she challenged him to slow down, and he reminded her that trust wasn't weakness. But challenges came, as they always do. An anonymous complaint was filed at the hospital. Their relationship became the subject of scrutiny. Dr. Avery was nearly suspended. Elena felt like a storm cloud again, like loving her cost too much. I'll walk away, she told him one night, tears pooling in her eyes. I won't let you lose everything. He shook his head. You were never a risk. You're the reason I remember why I became a doctor. They can take my title, my coat, but I won't let them take you. She testified in his defense. So did patients, colleagues, people who saw the way he treated others, not just her. In the end, the hospital let him stay, but more importantly, they stepped into a life together, not in secrecy, not in fear, but in the open. Elena went back to school, became a counselor. Lucas opened his own private clinic, one that focused not just on healing bodies, but on hearing hearts. Years later, they sat on a bench outside that very hospital, the place where it all began. I never told you, she said, smiling at him, but when I woke up in your arms that day, I thought I was dreaming. You looked like some kind of angel. He grinned, and you looked like a woman who'd been fighting too long without backup. Well, she said, lacing her fingers through his, you're my backup now. And for the first time in a long time, Elena didn't feel afraid. Because sometimes the fall isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of everything we never thought we deserved, until someone looks at us like we've always been worth saving.